All right. Welcome back, guys. We are talking the European bracket. We got Hot Wheel Sid in chat. I was blasting him for the North America bracket. So let's blast some more players on the European side. Why don't we? First off, I want to talk a little bit about, I think it's a little bit harder to judge European teams, just a bit, because they mostly have just like weeklies. And weeklies, some people don't take as seriously as maybe like North America monthlies. There hasn't been a lot of good monthlies in Europe, which kind of sucks. So I think we could see some different results here or there. But Europe overall is a much tougher region to play in as you drop down to the lower and lower numbers of the teams. So keep that in mind. There might be some more upsets. Like last time we had Penta, they dropped out, I believe, in the first round of the top 32, and then dropped out a little bit later in the lower bracket. And they were considered like a top 5 team in Europe last time. So there's always rooms for probably more upsets here in Europe than you would see in North America. North America generally, the talent is near the top. And I hear Giblet crying. Uh-oh. Crying he wants his food. But we have like the European talent kind of gets spread out a little bit further down into like the top 25 or so, I guess you would say. And there's more of a chance for upsets, even in this winners round one, like we saw last time with Penta. So something to keep in mind. I'm not going to be looking too much into the winners round one, but always something to keep in mind. Europe, usually the lower bracket just becomes a fucking mess. This whole thing, I wouldn't even like look at this. It's going to be so hard to predict this because it just gets so messy. Because we're going to see upsets. There's going to be a lot more upsets in Europe. So keep that in mind, but we'll do our best. I don't generally do upsets in predictions. More like who's going to win here, and then I'll give you a couple teams that I like that could create that upset, but we'll go through it. First off, we'll start at the top of the bracket. Flipside Tactics as the number 1 seed. I believe this is more of a legacy seed, number 1, for winning the last tournament, and they kept the same roster, I think. I think that's what it mostly is, because if you look at results, it's a little harder to read this result page, actually, and I can't zoom in that well, but it's a little bit of it, but I think it's also like, I think it's accepted. I don't think it's the end of the world that Flipside is number 1. I personally would have Northern Gaming up there, but a Flipside as the number 1, they shouldn't have too hard of a time. We got One Trick Pony. That should not be a problem. I'm trying to see what their results have been. Not really much. They don't play that often. Let's see the roster here. I might not know some of these players. Oh, it's Spoonie. Spoonie's back. Okay, so Spoonie's there. He has some history in Rlcs season number 2, playing with Mike, making it all the way to the stream games. They just didn't get anything done. It's always a chance. Always is, but they don't really have a ton of results. And I don't expect Flipside to have too much of a problem here. But this next matchup, juicy. Leftovers versus Zedek. We'll see. Well, and then there's also Enjoy. I want to see what the Enjoy roster is nowadays. I haven't really looked into them a ton. So we'll see, because why not? It's fun. Let's see. Where you at, Enjoy? I don't even know. Anywhere. You know what? No, it's like a whole new roster. They just lost to Leftovers 0-3 on February 27th. So you don't expect that to change. Leftovers should win. I don't know if they've chosen their third yet, but it's Sicky and Snasky coming up, and then they're gonna choose their third soon. Hopefully. Depends who played today. I'm not sure who played today. I think they were going towards Farah, but I'm not positive if they continue that trend. So we'll see. I think we have Runway Woody in here, or we did before. So he could probably give us some more information. He's like the Europe guru. So I love the Runway Woody. Someone asked in chat, do we know why there's no fantasy this RLCS? Usually they do fantasy after week 1 is over, and then they do it for week 2. Last time it was communicated very poorly, because last time, well, the first time it was run, it was based on just the qualifiers, and then it wasn't based on league play or anything like that. It was just like if you finish in the upper bracket, you get placed 1 through 4, and you get your points for that. And if you finish in the lower bracket, then you get placed 5 through 8, and you win on that. Last time it was what Inquisitors. They actually were like a super high money team because they beat Genesis in that first week, which was always a bad buy. And then Genesis was also still a really high buy, but they were a really bad buy based on the first rule set. But they didn't tell us what those rules are this time around. It was extremely confusing, and yeah. So I have no idea. They're probably doing it again. I assume it's going to be based off what they did last season, but they seem to change every single time. We also didn't talk about, while we're here, talking about Europe. I see a lot of people saying like, "Hey, Smash should probably be switched out for a different tournament organizer." Because they had some issues, and it was pretty bad issues again. It was like, what, 3 hours, I think? 2 to 3 hours, something like that, which sucks. But, like, most games don't run tournaments where you have 3,000 teams all trying to play at the same time. And most websites cannot contain that. And so a lot of people are like, Sonic should just make their own. It's like, that's, like, impossible. Like, yeah, let's just build our own system right away. Like, Smash does this on purpose because they do it for Super Smash Brothers tournaments. That's kind of where they started, I believe. That's why they call it Smash GG. But they get a lot of people signing up for this stuff. It's just sometimes server load is too much. Of course, we want a perfect system, but I don't know if there's a better website that could run it. Like ESL, their way of doing things is not all that great for a ton of teams. I've been in a lot of ESL tournaments, and like, to get through problems is not the easiest. It's not as easy as saying, since these guys failed, someone must be able to do it better. I don't know if someone can do it better. I just, of course, hope that Smash like fixes their servers. It's happened each time. Season 2 wasn't that bad. I think it was a very short delay. Season 1 was terrible, and Season 3 was also pretty bad as well. So I hope they can clean it up, but it's not as easy as saying, Silent should just make their own. It's like, not that easy, and it would cost way more money than just like trying to hire an outside source that already does this as like an expertise. So it's not that easy, but we all want it perfect, but sometimes the world is just not perfect. Anyway, we'll continue for the big matchup. We got Leftovers versus Zedek Nation. This should be a good one. Honestly, like, I like Zedek coming up through the scene, basically. Like, I think they're one of those teams that a lot of people don't see coming. And Dan Zizzle leading that squad over there. I don't know who the actual leader is, but we'll just say it's him. They've been playing a ton. They're getting a lot of practice in. They do get some surprise results here or there, but that's a lot of Europe. And then also they kind of lose to lower teams as well once in a while, like Pentagram they lost to in Rocket Royale. But I like Leftovers a lot. Siki and Snasky are probably two of those free agents that should be able to perform well with basically any third. Snasky probably best player on Super Sonic Avengers. And Siki has been around the scene forever, has always been on a top team, knows how to get it done. I think they do it again here. It doesn't matter who they choose as their third. Runway Woody's the leader. Of course he is. So, I like Leftovers. I think they're actually going to have a really good league play. Like, I think it's going to be one of those teams that grows throughout league play and maybe surprises some people. Might challenge for that 4th spot at the LAN. I think they make playoffs, and then we'll see what they do from there. So, we got Leftovers versus Flipside Tactics. I think I had Leftovers 2 in my rankings. Let's see. I had them as number 7. Cloud has them as 8 and has Zedek at 9. I also had Zedek at 10. So, keep that in mind as well. So, I had them a little bit lower, but that should be a good matchup. But again, so we said it for the North American bracket. This matchup is so important for the lower side. So, say Leftovers wins and then they lose to Flipside. They have to play Urban Myths, which according to Cloud, tells you where they are. That's actually a really tough matchup, but I guess all of Europe's really tough. I think he has him as 10. I think that's how that worked last time, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so he has him at 10. So Leftovers would have to play the 10 seed. I think probably the 10 seed is that last spot. That's like, they have a really good chance at making league play. So that's, I don't know, that's still a really tough game for Leftovers. But then at the same time, if you go down to Zedek, they would have to play Leaf Esports, and they are the number 7 squad according to this list. So that game's pretty important. But honestly, we'll get into it. I'm not too thrilled with what Leaf has been doing lately, so just watch out for that. It might not be the end of the world compared to, I think, in North America, where it matters a little bit more. But I think both these teams could make league play. Very possible that they both, like whoever wins this and whoever loses this, can still make it through on the other end. So we could see 3 teams come out of this grouping. Even though I have Zedek at number 10 and Cloud has him at number 9, so that changes things a little bit. But Zedek still has that chance, that outside chance to make it. So we'll move on. We'll talk about lowers in a little bit. But we got Pocket Aces versus Copenhagen Flames. And I've seen a lot of people talking, or at least a lot of people on my YouTube and Reddit, they keep asking me where I would put them. And like they didn't really stand out to me all that much. They were below the 12 for me personally, but I'll look at their results real quick. They've played Mockit. I'm sorry, not Mockit. Aces. Oh, that's gonna be a tough one. They played them just on February 27th, lost that, and then Rocket Royale they also lost to Northern Tactics, but you can't really like that's gonna happen. So that was kind of a bad beat for them in Rocket Royale. I wish we could have saw more games from them, but we didn't. So we'll see how they do, but I don't expect them to beat Pocket Aces. Like Apache-led team, he's always made it in through the upper bracket. And I don't know if they make it all the way through this time, but I can see him easily going to the final. Then we got Mockit versus Planet Key. Velocitas is here as well, and I'll talk about them a bit because a lot of people, obviously know who Velocitas is. And it's the Mike Rules squad with, Lamp and, Polypol. That's who it is. And they've looked like poo lately. That's the best word I can use for them. They actually got an extremely high seed in Rocket Royale that they got to be a top 8 seeded team for Rocket Royale. So they got to basically just play 3 games for free to see where they were going to go through. And they played against, of course, the top 8 teams, but they didn't even show up against any of them. And then they kind of fell out pretty quickly after that as well. So I wouldn't expect much from the Mike Rules squad. Sorry, Mike. I want to see you there, but I just have not seen it at all from them. Some people thought they'd be higher, like Rocket Road. They had them as a top 8, and I was like, this might be a little rough. Like, I would have much preferred them put like a team like Urban Myths, both in not a ton of experience, but just based on player names. I would have loved to see that over putting a Velocitas up there, but they got smacked. 0-2 versus Secrecy, 0-2 versus Zedek, 1-2 to Leaf, 0-3 versus Tablecloth at the time, who's now Urban Myths, 0-3 versus Northern Gaming. That's a lot of losses, guys. That's 1-12 in Rocket Royale. 1-12 versus teams that like they're gonna have to compete with to make a league play run. They're not looking good. I would not expect them to see them on stream. I wouldn't expect them to see them go even far into this day. Let's just go down here. I'm sorry that I have to do this. Like, I could see them losing right around here. Right in this area. Maybe lose around 3. Could be a short day for them. I hope they surprise me, but they haven't. I don't know. They just haven't looked good. So, yeah. I want to see Mike, but I just don't see it from them. Anyway, let's go back up here. I got on a tangent because of Velocitas. Where were we? Here we go. Planet Key. So I think Planet Key wins that. Mockit gets to play them. I think Mockit and Pocket are both pretty solid teams that will make it into this matchup. Now, this is where it gets interesting. It kind of comes down to how Mockit's playing that day. They kind of have been up and down. They started off so hot for Europe results, and they still get them once in a while, but they've kind of fallen back down to like normalcy lately. Let's see. Yeah, so earlier on in February, they beat Penta. They beat Penta again. They lose to Secrecy in 7. Then they lose to Pocket Aces 4-1. And then they start kind of trending down after that. Then losing to Leaf, then losing to Zedek, and then losing to Penta after they beat him twice. And this is like throughout February. And then Rocket Royale comes, and they actually do pretty well. They beat Zedek. They lose to Secrecy, but that's expected. They beat Leftovers. They beat Rise. Then they beat Leftovers again, so they beat them 5-0 in total. And then they lose to Northern Tactics, which isn't the worst loss in the world. Like a scrub killer team is going to be rough. Pashu was on that team as well, so hats off to him. But then they come back in February 27th. They start playing well again. So I don't know what this means at all, but they beat Pocket Aces 4-2. Then they beat Flipside 3-1 as well. They, of course, beat Velocitas, as we mentioned before, being a poo squad, 3-0. And then 3-1 against Existence with the fancy 6 in their name. Good job. I have no idea what Mockit is going to do. Sometimes they look like they could be the best team in Europe. Sometimes they just don't show up. I like them here. I don't know why, but I'm going to say they beat Pocket Aces here. It could be because they just beat them recently, but it was a close set, so I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. I think Mockit is one of those teams that should make LAN, or could make LAN. I don't think there's a lot of teams that can make LAN in Europe, which is weird because it's very competitive. Like, I guess they could, but I don't know. I like Mockit. I'm giving them a LAN spot, so I should have them winning here, beating Pocket Aces. I'm going to say, you know what? Let's go for it. A lot of people will think this is a close series. Let's just go 3-0. I think it's one of those where like everyone's going to be like, oh man, this is going to be a really good series, and then Mockit's just going to blow them out for some reason. So we'll just say 3-0 here, and if I'm right, I'm right. I'll probably forget by the time I'm on the desk, so I'll probably predict something else. It's going to be a long 2 days, so I'm going to be a little loopy. So, Mockit 3-0 versus Pocket Aces. What the hell? Let's go. Like, I think EU lands... So, like, I think Flipside and Northern should probably, throughout league play, be consistently enough that they will make it. And then after that, I think some of these teams have been dropping off more. Like, I don't think Europe is near the top is as contested as it once was. I think, like, I don't think Leaf is up there. I don't think Penta... Well, you know what? Penta's been playing well, too. You know what? I could be wrong. I think there's probably like 5 to 6 teams. All right, so I'm going to take that back. This could be contested, but I think Mockit has it. I think Mockit will prevail and get league play. I think maybe throughout the season of league play, teams might start to differentiate themselves from each other. But we'll see. We haven't seen Flipside practice in a shit ton, so who knows? I don't know. We'll see. This is predictions. Trying to have some fun here. Anyway, we'll move on. So I got Mockit 3-0. Why not? Let's go for it. I think Apache-led team is good, but I don't think they're LAN-worthy right now as that roster. But they've surprised me before with a good LAN show last time, with Violent Panda actually playing really, really well lately. So who knows? We'll see. Anyway, we'll move on. Northern Gaming versus Pentagram. The Pentagram is one of those teams that's like, they've been getting results here or there. It's not a ton, but it's one of those things where you see a couple results and you're like, I don't really know this squad, but they could be one of those teams where out of nowhere they do well. We got, I don't even know how to say his name, Pornflakes. Powerin' Like, I always call him Pornflakes, but I don't think it's Pornflakes. Then we got Data. We've seen him around a lot. And Alex161. This is one of those squads that is like the super outside chance that can make some noise, but this is one of those that can screw up some brackets. So look out for Pentagram. I don't expect them to lose here, but look out for them. It is possible. They did just a 3-0 Zedek kind of recently. Don't have much else to show for themselves, but I think it's one of those teams. Just watch out. It's power porn. I don't even know what it is. I just call him Pornflakes because I think it's funnier. But I probably should get his name actually pronounced. See, it's a problem in Europe. A lot of these names are weird, so it's hard to get them all pronounced right. But let's continue. So look out for them, but Northern Gaming should win. Come on, let's be honest here. Northern Gaming's looking pretty good. The past Gfinity, though, was pretty interesting. They lost to... I can't remember who. I think it was Penta. Like, I don't have the result here, but Northern Gaming is not one of those teams that is going to necessarily sweep league play, but we'll see. All right, so we got Leaf Esports versus Urban Myths. Leaf Esports is one of those teams right now. I feel like they've been dropping a lot, and I would not be surprised if they don't make league play. I think a lot of people would be upset. I like Urban Myths, and that's not necessarily because I love Doomsy, but Bluey's a very good player. It's one of those teams that they're kind of brand new, so they didn't have as many results. They did just beat Leaf in Gfinity. I believe it was Gfinity pretty recently. So this is one of those games that, again, could matter a lot, but it's probably going to come down to, like, these two and these two are going to wind up playing each other in the lowers. So out of these four, you got to watch out. It could, like, this could be highly contested between these four because that's the way these matchups work. As you can see down here, we have Urban Myths versus Leftovers. The way the bracket is now, I would actually have Leaf probably down here. And do they have Leftovers winning? They do. So it'd be Leftovers versus Leaf for me. I like Urban Myths more than Leaf. Leaf started out honeymoon phase once again. Started out really hot, and again, this lower bracket could be a mess. But I think it comes down to those four teams. There's two spots. Unless like someone does a surprise win versus Northern or Flipside, which is kind of unlikely, but it has been done before. So 4 spots and only 2 of these teams can go kind of sucks. But I think Urban Myths is better than Leaf, and I think Leftovers is better than Zedek. I think Urban can prove it versus Zedek as well. It's probably part of my Doomsy love coming out there. But so I think Urban wins this game, plays against Northern. And you expect Northern to win that one pretty handily, but because it's kind of like a fresh team coming out. So I think Northern kind of wins that one either way pretty handily, but you just never know. It's Europe. Europe's going to be crazy. Crazy. And then we got Team Secrecy, who's playing out of their mind lately. Versus Small Town Girls, that shouldn't matter, or Pure Excellence, shouldn't matter. And then we got Penta. Penta sometimes looks really good too. But I think they also have a lot more downs than ups. But they can show up versus the best in Europe. They've done it before. A lot of these teams keep saying this. I don't know why I said it wasn't highly contested, but, you know, I'm just going off the cuff here, you know? Penta's one of those teams that can show up. I just think they have more lows than highs. We'll see if that continues. I'm trying to find their recent results here for you guys. There's a lot of sheets here, but I believe they just played in Team Secrecy in the finals of, I think it was Gfinity. I believe Secrecy won. I was watching most of that, but I didn't watch all of it. I think Secrecy wound up pulling out the win there. I don't have that result on me. Someone will show it in chat. Secrecy, of course, a lot Mets and Magnus. So a lot of people don't probably know Magnus or Mets. I don't know what rosters they were on in Rlcs Season 2. I have seen them around a ton. Met's been around a lot. He's been playing a lot on stream. Magnus has been a player that I've at least known his name for a long time. I just don't remember what team he was on for past seasons. I'll get that info before the desk segment on Sunday. So we'll get it going. But Team Secrecy's been playing out of their minds. They're the 3 seed for a reason. They're one of those teams that I thought would not be doing this well. I wonder if this will continue. We'll see. I don't know. But I like Secrecy here. Penta versus Red Eye. Red Eye, like a lot of people probably won't be talking about, and I don't think they're as good as what they used to be, but it's the old Precision Z squad. They have a chance. They have a lot of experience on that team. They have a chance for some upsets. I think it's more of an outside chance. But again, it's Europe. Who the hell knows? But yeah, Penta. Let's see what their recent results are, because that's a little bit more interesting to me. So they lost to Aces. They beat Northern Gaming. So that's one of their highs. They beat Rise. Who cares? They 2-0'd Leaf. I think Leaf's been going downhill. Then they lose to Northern Gaming. They lost to Northern Gaming a lot, too. It was 5-1, which is kind of where you would expect them to be a little bit more, personally. I think they beat Northern Gaming, but it might have been a sub issue, too, because it's highlighted. So I'm not sure exactly what that roster was. They beat Pentagram. They beat Age Matters. They beat Zedek. They beat Leftovers, which is really big. So they are beating those teams below them. So I just think they're probably like a 6th seed, and that's like a comfortable spot for them. And I don't expect them to do much. So like out of all the teams here, like, I think Penta's probably like solidified as like a 6 team, and no matter what happens in the Europe League play, you know what I'm going to call it. Penta will make playoffs. They'll be in the quarterfinals, and I think they have almost no shot to miss the playoffs and almost no shot to get a bye. Out of all the teams, I think they're probably the most consistently where they are. They do have some highs, and I think they will get some extra wins, but then they get some lows once in a while. It depends how many highs they can have during league play. Like I think they'll be like somewhere in that quarterfinal range, maybe a 4 or 5 seed, maybe as low as 6. It depends how many highs they actually get throughout the league play. But Penta is, of course, Pwned, Freaky, and Killer No. Who was the other guy in Penta last season? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm drawing a blank. But we'll see how this roster does. We have Freaky, who actually joined Pocket Aces for a while and then decided, you know what, this isn't for me, and decided to come back to his teammates. His teammates let him back, open arms. These guys have been playing well together. They're like obviously friends. If one of them left them and came back and they still wanted to play together, so you would think they've got to be pretty friendly to each other. But I think they lose their game. Grandmaster. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Grandmaster Sexy. So we got Team Secrecy winning that game over Penta. And honestly, I think the big 3 here probably doesn't have a problem. Team Secrecy, Penta has shown up before. That one could be an upset. Northern should beat whoever they play here. I think that one should be pretty easy. And then this one's up in the air, but it should be these 2 teams. I would be shocked if it is not Mockit versus Pocket here. That one should be the most likely to have the same 2 teams playing in that game. So we'll see how that goes. Then we got on the bottom here. So I had Leftovers winning that game, so that would still be correct. So we got Leftovers versus Urban Myths, which actually I would think that would be Leaf, because I think Leaf would lose this game. So Leftovers versus Leaf Esports. It's kind of like I think of them as like I think Leftovers is growing and climbing in skill as they continue to play more, as long as they solidify their third. I could be wrong, but I kind of like where their path's going compared to where Leafs is going, because Leafs is kind of, it's like that. Sure, I don't know. Whatever. Some type of X. So we got Leftovers. I think they will beat Leaf, but this is going to be one of those highly contested spots. But I got Leftovers. I like Leftovers a lot. I think they could be that surprise land team, if there is one. I would put Leftovers there. I don't want to count out Sicky yet or Snasky. They're very solid players. And Farah, I haven't seen a lot of Farah, but if he is the starter, they chose him for a reason. And I think it was kind of smart of them. They kind of grabbed 3 pretty highly contested subs, and they wanted to try him out and see who would actually be the starter. And so I think that'll help them a lot. And I think Leftovers takes it. Next up, we got Mockit versus a possible Red Eye, which is probably what... Mockit would win there, so Pocket. It would be Pocket versus Red Eye. I think this matchup is generally going to be an easy one for Mockit or Pocket, so I think they both still make it in. But I think generally this matchup shouldn't give them any problems. I think Red Eye, they have the experience, but they don't have the skill that they once did. Compared to Mockit or Pocket. So I think that one should be pretty easy of a game for them. All right. And then we got Leaf, which would not be Leaf. It's very confusing. It would be Urban Myths versus Zedek, which I believe would still stay the same. We go back up here based on my stuff. Of course, I think Europe, the bracket's going to explode way more than NA, so keep that in mind. We might not see any of these matchups. But Zedek, yeah, I have them losing to Leftovers. This is another highly contested spot. I like Urban Myths here. I think people are going to be counting out Bluey. So I think Bluey's going to show up a little bit more. It's going to be one of those star players of So I could see Urban Myths pulling a Deception and doing where Deception had Vince, who had pretty good stats. I think the same might happen here with Urban Myths, where they sneak in, and then they probably don't win a lot of sets, but Bluey puts up some good numbers. And we'll see if that continues. But that's what I'm going with. Of course, there's a Sebedem who had really good numbers last time on Summit, but they just got blown out. So it was a little different compared to Deception, where they kept games close. Summit was just getting shit on, like all of league play until they beat Oh My Dog. And Sebedem put up pretty decent numbers, but I think Bluey's going to take over that role. I think Bluey will be the one getting the numbers in if they do make it to league play, but it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy whatsoever. I think Leaf misses out, which everyone would be extremely upset about because no Jazer. Everyone's going to be very mad. Way more mad than the F2 situation. So we'll see, but they've just not been playing all that well. I've never been too high on Jazer's positioning in the few times I've seen him, but that was also a while ago. Like in the past qualifiers in Rlcs, I have not, like in the one where like they were literally just air dribbling sideways across the field. I can't remember the team name he was on, but it was an awful showing. I don't expect that same showing. Like I think Jazer's obviously gotten a lot better, and he played pretty well with flip side, but that's the Cooksey or Markey kind of thing where like I think they can make anyone look good, and I think Jazer's a very good mechanical player. We'll see how this works out. I just haven't seen him in a while in a team where it's more of his peers, I guess you would say, because Cooks and Markey are like gods. So we'll see how that works. Leaf, again, started out really hot, so obviously they're doing something right, but they haven't found that spark in a while. I think that spark dies out here, and they don't make it, but we'll see. And then we got Penta versus Planet Key. This is another one of those games that I think should be pretty simple. I think Penta easily wins this. I think in Europe, there's 10 teams fighting for 8 spots compared to North America's 9 for 8. I think there's a decent gap after that, but again, we've seen teams collapse on the European side. Penta collapse, so we'll see. But I think Penta wins that one pretty easily. I think the highly contested ones are the first matchup where it could be, it's basically 4 teams battling 2 spots with Leaf, Urban Myths, and Leftovers, and Zedek Nation. I think those 4 battle it out for the last 2 spots in the European side. If I had to pick LAN teams now, which I didn't do for North America, but we'll do it here. I think Flipside Northern will probably get the top 2 seeds. I think when it matters most, they will pull out some wins. And I don't think Pocket makes it. I think Mockit does. I think Secrecy is one of those teams that's been playing really well. I wonder if that trend continues. It's one of those, a lot of teams have been getting hot and then cold. I think it's going to come down to Secrecy or Leftovers. But if Secrecy keeps their hot streak going, then they will easily make it. But we'll see what their first round matchups are. Like if they go into league play and they play like a Northern or Flipside as like their first 2 opponents, that could actually really hurt them, like confidence-wise. It could hurt basically anyone's confidence if you're playing Flipside and Northern. Plus, if you don't get a win there, so it's there's 2 signs basically. Like if you play Flipside and Northern as your first 2 games in league play, if you go 1-1, you are through the roof. You are extremely excited, and you're probably going to carry that through league play. But if you go 0-2, there's some doubt that starts trickling. Even though it's probably the 2 best teams in Europe, there's still a lot of doubt coming in. So we'll see if teams can bounce back from that. Whoever does have to do that, if anyone does, but. If they do split it, because again, Europe is crazy, and I can't predict Europe. I don't think anyone can actually predict Europe. Like, if anyone actually gets, like, a correct bracket completely, that's going to be impossible. But maybe, like, even just, like, these rounds and then maybe the later, lower rounds, like, from here on out. But it's probably not going to happen because Europe is absolutely insane. So these predictions were a lot of, like, maybe this will happen, maybe it won't. I think NA... Once again, not as much depth as Europe does. I still think that there's a gap from 10 and on, or the top 10 from Europe and then like 11 through whatever. But we've seen surprising results every single week in Gfinities. So you just never know. But it's so hard with weeklies because they don't mean as much, I think, to a lot of these teams. It's hard to tell how much warm-up a lot of these teams are getting before Gfinities compared to like the North America monthlies where you expect the teams to be warming up a lot right beforehand. So we might get more accurate results out of North America than Europe, but that could just be because Europe's depth is so large that it turns a lot more into hockey, where in hockey, like anyone can win on any given day. even win a best-of-7 series in hockey, like when you go into playoffs, it just depends on who's hot that day, where North America is probably not really like that, but Europe kind of is, so we'll see how it goes. And I think as we go further and further, like into more and more seasons, it's going to keep trending that way, like maybe even more towards North America as well, where it's going to be harder and harder for teams to consistently be at the top, or like at least when playoffs happen and stuff. But for now, like we still have some of that. We still have some, but not a ton. And we'll see where it goes from here. But that'll do it for the European section. I'm going to take Twitch chat questions. If you want to watch it, there'll be a broadcast up on the Twitches and on over there. But yeah, that'll do it for Europe, guys. Thanks for watching on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Later. All right, guys, if you have any questions, and just like